Okay.
Maybe to better explain this, no? Let's start with, the book, The Winds of War.
The Winds of War.
Yeah, earlier, 1938, 1937, when Japan invaded China.
And that's what he's saying.
And yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm just telling you that. And that's when you first get scared, because you saw that in the movie, on the movie tone news. It comes out in the news. The rape of Nanking, the bombing of the firing in Shanghai. My father was there when Shanghai was being bombed.
Oh, he was there. Oh.
And
Professor, wait till you say that now. When you are we starting?
Yeah.
of course, we started already. What
What was your father doing in Shanghai?
Well, he went with a group of Quezon to work out for the independence of the Philippines. They went to the States, and on their way back, they passed through Hong Kong. But my father was left behind in Shanghai, so we even went to the pier to welcome Quezon, and we hoped my father would be there. And my gosh, Quezon, when President Quezon came down, he said, "No, Congressman Oppus was left behind in Shanghai," and we knew that Shanghai was being bombed, so it scared the daylights out of us. And that, on that day too, on the day Quezon came, that was the first time they played Mabuhay. That song Mabuhay. We say Mabuhay. That's a beautiful song. Anyway, those were the Winds of War. Then, as a kid, you watch that in the movie, you see the atrocities in China, and you get scared. You get scared. Then later on, if you'll find out, MacArthur, I don't know if you know this, but General MacArthur retired from the U.S. Army. And what the Philippines did is the Philippine government, as a Commonwealth, I think, hired MacArthur to form the Philippine Army. That's how MacArthur became head of the Philippine Army. So he organized the Philippine Army. And I remember before, this was about between 1937 and 1941, there would be, I would go to San Beda College, my school, and I would pass through Mapa High School. But Mapa High School was the recruiting center, and you had a picture of Uncle Sam pointing, "Uncle Sam needs you," And you could see, I could see young men. I was 8, 9 years old. I could see young men, teenagers, enlisting. And that also, hey, something's going on.
We should probably mention what MAPA stands for.
MAPA, the MAPA is in it.
The name of a
politician, I think.
Okay.
Placido MAPA. And
It was a military academy. Was it a military academy or just a school?
A high school.
Just a high school.
A regular public high school.
Public high school.
And I would walk through Mapa High School, going to my school. And I would see the recruits. And in 1939, I don't know, somewhere there, between 35 and 39, then the Philippine Army was formed. We had the trainees. They called them trainees. Remember that, man?
Yeah.
Well, during the big parade, the trainees.
That was part of the USAFFE?
No, this is the Philippine Army.
Oh.
As differentiated from the Philippine Scouts. The Philippine Scouts were battalions. We have the 57th Infantry and the 45th Cavalry. Philippine Scouts, Filipinos, but part of the U.S. Army.
Part of the U.S. Army.
Which is part of the U.S. Army. But the Philippine military, the trainees, were part of the Philippine Army, which separate, which MacArthur organized, And so that's I remember those days. Those were scary. And then we had the ROTC was organized too.
Where were you living at the time?
In Abreu. That's about 5 miles away from Santo Tomas, or maybe 3 miles away.
Along Mendiola.
Along Mendiola. Along Malacanang, Malacanang, the presidential palace.
Area.
In that area. And so, well, the American embassy was right there next to Malacanang then. And you could see the American flag from our house. Where am I now? I'm lost. Anyway, You know, these were the beginnings of war, and you could feel somehow. You know, the ROTC, we had a ROTC in school, in San Beda College. The college department had their ROTC, and then every now and then they would conduct maneuvers. There would be maneuvers, and even that was scary as a child, you know. You're excited at the same time. By gosh, this could be real, you know. And to tell you quite frankly, even at that time I was scared. I was scared of war.
How many were in your family?
5. I was the youngest.
5 children?
Yeah. I have 4 sisters, and I am the youngest. Anyway, I kept that to myself, of course. I didn't tell anybody. My friends and I sometimes would talk about it as kids, you know. Hey, you know, we'll kill some Japanese. You know how it is. You were reading Captain America and Superman, Batman. And at that time, we were inspired by Captain America, who was our hero. And those were the things that they were so real.
So,
and then
around the household, did you and your family talk about the Japanese coming down?
No.
Perhaps preparing what might happen?
Nobody talked about it really. We probably just experienced it individually, you know. You don't want to talk about it.
I don't think we really believed
Yeah,
that war was coming
to the Philippines, and that we would lose the war. That was beyond our comprehension.
We had so much faith in America.
America was the, you know,
nothing
nothing
could happen to us. Touch us.
Let me go to your household at this time. Your father was working...
he was working as a civilian in the Cavite Navy Yard. And so...
And he had retired from the Marines, did you say?
Yeah, he was discharged from the Marines. And he came to Manila. That's when he met my mother. Then he was working... He was the police chief in Manila then, because before the Commonwealth,
1935,
they had a police force, and my father was the chief of police then, and they were in Masic, where Luneta is now. That was Masic Station, and we were staying there. We were housed there, and we had as, you know, servants and maids, the inmates, the trustees. They were the ones who were doing all the work around there. And then, of course, after that, when they established the Commonwealth, then they did away with, they put the Filipinos already in charge. So that's when my father went to work somewhere else. Not right away for the Navy base, but that was later on, you know. He was in the Cavite Navy base. And that's when the war broke out. Our first impression was, oh, it's going to last a week probably, you know. Can't last more than that, because that's what we heard from the adults, from my uncles, from my aunts. Oh, America's going to take care of that. There's no problem. And we were happy because we had no class December. When the war started, we were, yay, no class.
No class, yeah.
We were kids. We were just happy that we had no class.
Before we go into the outbreak of war, I wanted to get a little sense of what Manila was like pre-war.
Oh,
beautiful.
Can you describe what Manila was like?
It was
what do you remember about Manila?
I remember wide streets, the acacia
cars being driven on
trees.
the left-hand side of the road.
Yes, the traffic was on the left side.
Yeah.
I mean, not this American style. We were like Hong Kong then. Yeah,
Oh, I don't
yeah.
remember that.
And Manila was beautiful.
There are trolleys, you know, we had streetcars.
Manila
Remember
Electric.
the tranvías?
Yeah, tranvía.
Yeah, the tranvías.
And,
I think it was only 3 cents, no? 3 centavos.
3 cents.
A bus ride was 3 centavos. You could go and get a meal for
5 cents.
5 cents. 1 cent
5 centavos.
for rice.
That's
which
2.5
was
cents.
plenty, and then 3 cents for meat or whatever. Yeah.
2
But
cents.
then the salaries were also like 60 pesos a month. But from that, you paid your rent, you paid your food, you paid the school, everything, you know.
Yeah.
And my mother would send us to the store to buy, oh, here's 10 centavos for everybody already, you know, a lot of rice. And they had the little carinderias. You know what the carinderias are?
Explain that.
Carinderias are what they call now
Small push-
turo-turo. They have all the food on display.
Food
and
stands.
then, like a deli, and then you just point which one you want. You want pancit? Oh, they'll put the whole 3 cents. Pancit is already plenty. Right.
Manila before the war was
And then the streets were all named
Clean.
after the states. Pennsylvania, there was Oregon, there was
Nebraska,
Georgia,
Nebraska, yeah. This is in the Ermita area.
In the Ermita.
In the Ermita area.
And our school was
Yeah.
in Georgia
Yeah.
and Iran.
She went to St. Paul's. I went to San Beda, which is the other side,
Yeah,
the north of
different districts.
two different districts.
But there weren't any jeepneys yet.
No,
So it was
no
just
jeepneys, buses.
No, there were buses,
buses.
Yeah, Meralco buses.
Meralco buses, and the tranvia and the streetcars, and of course the calesas. Now the horse-drawn vehicles were there.
Yeah.
And there was the
But-
botanical gardens,
Oh yeah,
the zoo.
The botanical garden,
the Luneta was a beautiful
What was
Luneta.
the-
We had a bandstand, and every Sunday the Philippine Armed Constabulary Band would be playing there, and they played at the New York World's Fair, you know. And boy,
What was the music of that era? What types of music did you enjoy listening to?
whatever was popular in the United States we were up to date.
yeah, because
we were up to date.
were
I mean,
under American.
we were still under American rule, you know.
Commonwealth.
When a movie, Gun with the Wind, when Gun with the Wind was premiered here, it was the same day it was premiered. Then any movie premiered here is premiered on the same day in Manila. So we were crazy.
Everything was American.
Everything was American.
The school system was American. The
Food was
everything
American.
was in English. All the textbooks, whatever textbooks they had here, we had. That's what we used. Jane, Dick, and Jane, and all that.
Cathedral
we had all
readers, the cathedral readers, the
yeah.
arithmetic, and all that.
We had American history. We sang the national anthem.
And you go inside a
We
movie.
would pull up the American flag and the Filipino flag.
We would sing both national anthems
Sing
on
both
Monday.
National anthems every Monday.
First,
So there was a very close identification with America.
oh yeah,
yeah.
Very close.
I think we were more Americanized than we knew. And we in school too,
In school, it was all English.
it was all
You
English.
know,
and-
we would get fined if we talked in Tagalog, at least in our school.
yeah.
Yeah. Because they didn't want us to talk in Tagalog in school, I mean, during class time.
Within the
But
premises.
Of course, outside. But within the premises, it was English. So everybody.
How about Spanish? Did you speak
Oh,
Spanish?
we had the Spanish classes, and then French was optional. But we didn't have Tagalog then, no?
Later on, in 1941, Tagalog was introduced as a national language in 1940.
I never took Tagalog.
1940 or 41. That was when it started. The idea behind that, Quezon wanted the Philippine national language because we had no national language, you see.
It's all different dialects.
Different dialects, and
And they were already gearing toward independence.
we were
so-
more English. We communicated with each other from the different regions in English. You know, the Visayans, when you meet a Visayan, you talk to him in English right away because there was no common Filipino. So that's why the President Quezon at that time declared Tagalog as the national language. So since that time, 1940, and now it has worked well, I think. It has worked. It's also good for the country. At first I was against it, but somehow it's also good because not everybody can speak English really, especially in the hinterlands, you know.
Well, the Philippines is probably the most widely English-spoken country.
To this
in
day,
Yes,
far
to this
east.
day.
they
yes,
have
yes.
discussions in Congress, in business. Everything is English.
The national
The
language.
news is a mix. They always use English. You know, they mix English and Tagalog.
They
to
would,
this day.
like you would say, the national language is Tagalog, but the language of commerce and education is English.
Especially now with the
So,
computers and
Yes,
everything.
with the computer. No, but we never left English. I mean, it has always been, because you cannot teach medicine in Tagalog. You cannot teach the law in Tagalog or engineering. So everything was in English, really.
All textbooks.
But the old textbooks were in English, but at that time, of course.
Back in pre-war Manila, there were, I'm sure there were Japanese civilians around.
Oh, yes, yes.
I had playmates.
Oh, yeah.
I had playmates.
So you got in
I
touch with
have,
them.
A picture there of Ninay, Cha-chang, Mi-chang, Tami-chang, and Japanese. They, because we were living on the second floor of an apartment, and downstairs was they used to call it Monggohan. It's Mongo con hielo, you know Mongo, the
The bean?
sweet, yeah,
Beans.
that sweet and bean over shaved ice, and they used to make all these concoctions. Sometimes they would pour some, what
Which
they
is
call the slurp now, the slurpees, you know, where they
Slurpees,
put,
mhm.
but
Ice
this
crust
was in
ice,
a
yeah.
dish, and they would put fruit or syrup, and very fancy, you know, and that was, we would go there just to eat that, and then shaved ice with cream corn and milk and sugar. Oh, that was so good. And the halo-halo.
Halo. That's where the halo started, you know. The Japanese.
Was there any feeling of
ill will?
ill will against the
No.
Japanese civilians?
No,
because
at
of
that
the-
time,
We
no.
played with
No.
them.
No.
Our barber, my mother used to take us downtown to Quiapo. Her barber was Japanese. She was the one who would cut our hair. No, there was nothing. And then it turned out these little classmates of where we played, you know, the playmates, the father was conscripted into the army. And then we lost contact completely. And I still had that picture. And one time, I met a Japanese newspaperman. And he came to the house, and we were talking.
Here.
I said, you know what? I said, I have a picture of playmates before the war. And he said, you know, give it to me. I will publish it in the Shimbun in Tokyo. You know that I was able to contact that family.
You're kidding. You're kidding.
They had, right
same
away, he
picture.
wrote, he was so excited. He made a trip here just to tell me, I don't know what to do. He said, I'm so excited.
The
You know,
newspaper
this
man,
family,
yeah.
well, why don't you send them over here or send me over there? No, wait, my newspaper will, you know, you didn't know what to do. Because this family contacted the newspaper,
Wow.
sent them an exact picture,
The same, they had the same copy.
picture,
Oh,
the same copy. And for a while I was corresponding with her, and you know, she said, I'm so excited, but she would only write in Japanese.
Did you ever find out what happened to the father who was
He was conscripted into the army, and then they had to run to the hills in Baguio during the, you know, when they were fighting. They had to be sent back to, they were expatriated to Japan.
Oh,
That
they were?
family,
Oh.
yeah.
The whole family?
No, the father died.
The father died,
died
in the
Baguio,
Philippines?
In the Philippines
During the
yeah,
war?
During the war, yeah. But and then she sent me pictures. Oh, she's a grandmother already, and my gosh, it was so. And
That's
then after
interesting.
that, yeah.
So we're moving the time now towards December of 41.
Yeah, then, okay. Just
Yeah,
before
okay.
December of 41.
That's
Like I said,
when-
then you could feel that the war was approaching, because in 1940, that's when we started the air raid practice, remember? We
Yeah,
would
we
have
had-
air raid practice. They set up sirens all over the city.
We had to black out the
Ooh.
windows.
We had to darken
black
up the windows, you
drapes.
know, and then we would have evening air raid practice, which means total blackout, you know, or you know, you would be walking down the street from school. They will not announce it. They just blow the sirens, and all of a sudden traffic stops, everything stops, and you run for a shelter, or you know. And we had air raid drills, sort of.
How
So
did you know where the shelters were? Did they have a map?
no shelter,
No
but
shelters, we
they
had to
no there were no
just
shelters, but
go
you not
inside
shelters,
the
but
house.
you go inside a house and seek protection there. Or if you're in a car, you stop the car, so everything stops. That will go on for about 5-10 minutes, and afterward the all clear siren goes on. Then everything's normal again. So that was getting scary, huh? When we had that, then
I
God,
wasn't scared. I was excited because
Yeah, we were
something
excited
new,
too,
you know.
yeah.
Wow, it's just like the
Wow.
movies, you know. You could see the adults. My mother, they would start praying and they would get so scared. But
as kids, we were
we
having
were
fun.
not really worried because
America
I
was.
could hear. Oh no, don't worry. About in 1 month, that's over. America will
America
come to our
will be-
help
it
and will be
take care of everything.
They'll take care of everything. The Japanese will never come. And then we were living then in San Andres at Malate, and when we heard the news of the bombing in Cavite, that's when we were praying because we didn't know what happened. My father was there, and for
Your father
two-
was in Cavite at the
yeah,
time it
for
got bombed?
2-3 days, yeah, when it was bombed, he was there. And then after 3 days, suddenly he showed up. Oh my God, everybody started crying, and that he was safe. And he was telling us all these stories about the bombing there and how friends were killed and everything. And then we moved to another house in Dakota Street. And when we were there, the Japanese had landed and they were Manila was declared an open city to save it from being
destroyed.
But they bombed it anyway.
They still bombed it.
January 1st. No, they didn't bomb it.
But you know what
January
the
1st.
Americans did? They opened the ports. They burned the oil
The oil
deposits,
fields in
all the
Pandacan?
oil in Pandacan. They burned that. And you could see all the black smoke. And then when we would wipe our noses, why is it black? Oh, that's all the soot from the oil. They opened the ports, and anybody could go there and just get what they wanted. But there was no panic, no looting, nothing. They just went there and they got whatever they could get.
When your family heard about the Pearl Harbor strike, and then you sensed that the Japanese fighters were coming over Manila and bombing Cavite and this and that, did your family start stocking up on supplies, going get food supplies, that sort of thing?
Yes,
Do you remember that?
I remember that.
I don't think.
What happened was not really, because we really thought we were invincible.
Yeah.
I mean, they just cannot
There
beat.
was no panic.
No way you can beat the
buying or
United
anything,
States.
no.
But I remember, because that was December 8th in the Philippines, Immaculate Conception. It was a holiday. She went to Catholic. We both went to Catholic schools, and on that day it was vacation
Yeah,
day.
it was vacation.
Day off from school.
Oh, it was?
That's why
Yes.
we were
Oh.
home.
That's why we were home. And I remember when we turned on the radio, Pearl Harbor was bombed. It was being announced. This I remember vividly, because our houseboy then, Telicio, was... Oh,
Right.
mami.
Okay.
So that was a Monday morning. And Telicio was the houseboy. He's the first one to wake up, because he cleans up. And that morning he was the one who woke us up. Gerana, war. War has been declared. They bombed Pearl Harbor. And I remember my father and my mother said, okay, they said they bombed Pearl Harbor. So what? We didn't know what was the extent of the damage or nothing. But anyway, maybe a few hours after that, then we heard the bombs dropping around Manila. They bombed Intramuros. They bombed the Central Bank, Intramuros. They bombed Intramuros. They bombed the pier. They bombed Sablan airfield. That's in Makati, Sablan.
Was that Sablan?
Sablan, oh. Sablan Airfield, which is Ayala Avenue now, which used to be Sablan Airfield. And then they bombed Camp Murphy. Camp Murphy was the Philippine Army, because I have two cousins there, Benito Oppus and Victor Ayaay, who were both pilots of the Philippine Army, Philippine Air Force. They were just recent graduates from Philippine Military Academy, and they were the first Filipino pilots, no? And
Have a chance to get into their planes and
they were able to take the planes to Mindanao. A few of them. Victor Ayaay was able to fly his. Benny was able to fly his, but some were caught on the ground. And anyway, that was when at that time too, our neighbor was my uncle, who was also a recent graduate of the Philippine Military Academy. He was a second lieutenant then, Angel Oppus. And, you know, he was always in uniform, and he had his old Plymouth car. I remember when the war was declared, you know, I think Roosevelt went to over the radio and all that, and when Angel left, when my uncle left, I think he was going to Camp Murphy in the morning. By the afternoon when he came back, the car was already camouflaged. It was a gray. The car was originally white in color, but then when he came back in the afternoon, it was already camouflaged.
painted it, you mean?
Yeah, painted. Yeah, and it was gray, painted gray camouflage, nice shiny, and there was, you know, I was as a young kid. I was looking at the front, what do they call this? Headlights, and then there was just a slit. They covered it with tape, and there's just a tiny slit for air. Wow, I said, and then I shot Angel come down, come off that car, and he had a steel helmet on already. Wow, I just can't believe it. In the afternoon, everything was so. We were confident. We were not going to lose that war. Yeah.
We thought
It was unbelievable, you know, no way.
The most, you know?
1 month, in 1 week, they'll be out. My father was saying, "Oh, don't worry, we
We
don't
were
have
doing
to."
homework, you know, just
Yeah, for classes.
ready
to
for
school
school.
then on the next
Yeah, for the next day or anything like that. But
No.
Oh, you didn't?
no. But we thought there would be a while, but not that long, not 4 years, no.
Schools were suspended right away, classes, because it was very uncertain. We had to really be careful about closing the windows at night.
Yeah.
And then
Throughout December until even Christmas.
Yes,
Bombing.
yeah.
bombing was on. What happened to us after about a week after Pearl Harbor? I know we were still living in Malacañang, in that area, and that's when my father already decided to go to evacuate. You know, we evacuated, and we decided to go to San Mateo, which is about.
That early you were already.
Oh yeah, we were going
evacuated?
there.
We did not.
We evacuated. Let's see, about December 16, 17, something like that. Because I remember when we reached San Mateo, we were still hearing the Misa de Gallo, the 5 o'clock mass in the morning for Christmas. You know, yeah, the Misa de Gallo. And
That's for,
we
yeah.
would hear mass there at 5 o'clock in the morning, but there was war already. You could see there were air raids conducted by the Japanese almost regularly. As a matter of fact, on the day we moved from Malacañang, from that district, from San Miguel to San Mateo, we had to stop. The whole family and that was the first scary. I got really scared because we were caught near the water reservoir in in San Juan. And my father was so scared. He said, why are we here in this reservoir? They might bomb this, you know. This is, and we could see the Japanese planes. And I got scared that time.
How far away was San Mateo from?
From Manila is about 20 kilometers. So more or less 10 miles, no? Maybe a little farther.
And your family didn't evacuate?
No,
No.
no, we
did.
were in Dakota then, and then January occupation of Manila when they marched in was January 1st, no? January 1st,
Yeah, that's when they moved in.
and
It was the second.
oh, the second, okay, and I remember when they announced that they were marching in, we
Open
were on
city.
Dakota because it was open city, so they would just march in. There was nobody on the streets, you know, and we were inside the house, but we were peeping through the shutters, and we saw them march in down the street, a whole group of them. And
Did you see them
we
on
were
the bicycles?
shaking, huh?
Did you see them on bicycles?
No, they
No?
were marching in. I
They were
remember,
marching in.
yeah. And we were just peeping, you know. And there was nobody on the streets, no, not like a welcome thing or anything, nobody. And then after that, they went from house to house. Not soldiers, civilians, Japanese civilians. I guess
Now,
they were.
Who were marching? The soldiers.
Oh,
were
soldiers, yeah, they were marching in.
marching. But the
and-
civilians would go from house to house. You'd
yeah,
just-
well, that was after, maybe in like 2 or 3 days later, so we didn't know what to do. They went from house to house looking for the Americans. And they went to the house, they were very polite, they were very courteous, but we were just watching them. And we had already heard the stories of concentration camps in Germany and all that, so when they came to the house and they asked, are there any Americans here? Like that. And my father came. He said, I'm an American. Well, sir, we have to take you to the concentration camp. When we heard concentration camp, we started to cry. You know, all those thoughts of what they were doing in Germany and all that. So he said, okay. So he was very calm. He took some his stuff. And we were already, and my mother was already telling them that we're a family. Why don't you take us all to the camp so we can all be together? Oh, no, we're just taking Americans. You're not considered Americans, you know, because my mother was Filipino. So they took him away. And then, but after that, we found out where he was. It was, I think, Santo Tomas already, where they herded everybody. But it was very, very liberal. We could bring food, we could visit every day, and then we could see that whole families were there. And it was, oh, this isn't so bad, you know. My dad wanted to take us all in so we could be together, because each one had this like a small little, they built their own shanties and their own plots, and they planted vegetables. It was
But
like,
you actually got to go inside the gate and visit.
oh yes, you could go in, talk to them, bring them food, any kind of food, any amount of food. And that went on for, I think, 2 years. We could just walk in there and just bring food and everything. And then later on, when things got tougher, then they started cutting down on the visits, cutting down on what you could bring, and until it, toward the end, you couldn't even visit, nothing. He would just send us a note that he would be at that window, because you know how Santo Tomas is, one block like that, and this was like a classrooms here, so these were like barracks, and he would be in one of them, and we would go to this street and just wave, and we could see him at the window there, but that was later on.
During this time, did you see the Japanese march in down Dewey Boulevard?
Not me, no. We were already in
No,
San
they were
Mateo.
in
Oh,
San-
you were already in San Mateo?
Yeah.
We were in San Mateo. What happened was, all right, the Japanese came into Manila January 2nd, okay. But even before January 2nd, we moved from San Mateo. My father was so scared. We moved from San Mateo, we went to Montalban, which is 5 more kilometers down, up north.
What did you bring with you?
Whatever food we had,
And clothes, and that's it.
and clothes, and that's it, the barest minimum. No? And we were 3 families, really. My cousin, no, we were 3 families, yeah. Chia Ong-hel, remember that army man I told you came in with the steel helmet? His family joined us, Boy Oppus, and then Kunya, I forgot her name, Real, another family, joined us too. So that all 3 of us moved together from San Mateo. And on July 2nd, that's when we started hearing rumors that the Japanese are already in Manila. And this, I remember this because we saw the first Japanese truck pass by. And they had the Japanese soldiers with so many leaves, you know, camouflage. The most amazing thing was you could smell them. I mean, as they were approaching, you knew there's something
Different smell.
something different with the seaweed. They smell like seaweed, you know. Wow! And then later on, more trucks came in, and really, the whole Montalban was just smelling of seaweed from the Japanese.
Imagine,
Wow!
It's the first time.
And we were like them. We were just
Japanese
peeping, and they all looked alike, you know. They all looked alike, and we were scared, of course. So we just stayed in San Mateo, and they did not. After that initial drive-through by the Japanese, I think further up north, because up north was the Montalban Dam already, which later on became the Yamashita Line, you know.
Yeah, that was a battleground.
That was a battleground, and that was our biggest
Montalban,
mistake. we stayed there. We got bastard.
What was the village San Mateo like?
It's a small town.
Town, a small
It's a small town.
Yeah.
A small town, like you have a small plaza, and the houses around it, just really more
Very rural.
very rural.
It's wooden, like nipa huts.
Yeah.
Wooden.
Some no, but there were some. The house we lived in San Mateo, was built during the Spanish time, so it was very, very well made. You know, there was a stable, and the motors were built with. They used the white of the egg to as bonding for the adobe. So it was very thick wall, and that served as our air raid shelter too. But we didn't experience anything really bad when the Japanese came in.
Yeah, you know, it was peaceful.
It was peaceful. I
At
mean,
least in Manila, it was normal.
Yeah.
We went to market. Nobody bothered us at the start. You know.
at the start, but then you know.
When did you come back to Manila?
We went back to Manila about February, a month later. Then we went back to our house in San Juan. That's where we moved to San Juan. You know, because what happened was we were living near Malacañang before. Our house really was in San Juan. But San Juan at that time, which is about 7 miles away from Manila, San Juan was considered a barrio. I mean, it's a vacation place. Our house was in San Juan, but we rented a fourth-door apartment. We rented 4 doors in Malacañang. We rented an apartment there because it was nearer our school. So we would only, before the war, we would only go home to San Juan for the weekends, for the weekend vacation, and then go back to Manila again for school. So after the Montalban experience, when we went back, we didn't go back to Abreu anymore, to Malacañang area, because we had our house in San Juan, and we didn't go to school anymore.
Was your father still working at that time?
No more, no more. My father was a congressman then. And now, what happened was, most of the soldiers, you know, this is what I hear now. I've heard this so many times, because most of the soldiers who fought in Bataan were Visayans. We're from the region, from our region, from the south.
The Philippine Army.
The Philippine Army, you know. They were mostly Visayans. Now, what I heard was the tactic of General MacArthur then was to bring the Visayan trainees, the Visayan recruits, to Luzon. Then the Luzon recruits were brought to Mindanao, and the ones from Mindanao were brought to the Visayas. That way there would be no desertion, because there would be strangers in those places, you know.
They couldn't desert.
They couldn't desert even if they wanted to, because they didn't speak the language, the dialect, which is brilliant, you know. But anyway, that's why probably they just had no way out but fight all the way, you know. And so when Bataan surrendered and Corregidor surrendered, most of those soldiers, except for the ROTC. The ROTC were the local boys from Luzon. There was a family, a neighbor of ours, you know, who came from the same school as I, the De La Paz family. The father of De La Paz, Don Emilio De La Paz, was the editor of the El Debate, a Spanish newspaper. And he had 5 kids, I think. Nena, Albert, Angel, Remy, Joseling, and Tony. 5 boys. Only one survived the war. And sometimes I think, even now I feel like I consider, because Joseling was my playmate. And yeah, they were brought to Bataan. Some of them died in Bataan. Some in the concentration camp.
That Bataan fell.
And one of them, I mean,
How did you find out that Bataan fell?
Oh, wow.
oh gosh, you
Yeah,
know,
because we were listening.
we had the
Voice of America. No,
Voice of America. We had the radio. Each one, you know, it was prohibited. But then at night, almost every family, you know, we would listen to the shortwave, and you know, every night, you know, from our place in San Juan. San Juan is a mountain. That's why they call it San Juan del Monte, San Juan of the mountains, and that's high. From our place, from the second floor of our house, as you look into Manila Bay, at night, you could see the flashes of artillery. You know,
you could hear.
Oh, yeah, you could hear, and only it came only from the Japanese side. You know, because boom, 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 and then every night you will hear that. Tan, 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 tan. Oh, I cry.
You know, and
Every time they play God Bless America, it just makes you cry. Up to now. And now we love that song. And then they sing Mabuhay. And then the guy, let's pray for the boys. They're holding up. We're still fighting here. We're waiting for help, you know.
at that time we had moved to Pasay. We were living beside the American school. What's that street there? Donada, I think. Donada.
Yeah.
You know, Taft and Donada. We were in that corner. And American school was the Japanese barracks. And at night, you know, the worst thing I think for Japanese at that time was to steal.
Yeah.
So when they caught a couple of Filipinos there who had stolen something at night, it was pitch dark. and we were in a, it's not the second story, but like a mezzanine. There was a mezzanine, and we were behind the curtains, you know, peeping, because we couldn't see a thing, but we could hear the moanings, the way they were being beaten. Those thieves who were the robbers, you know, they called, that they caught, and we would, oh my God, oh my, you know, and we were so scared. And then that was a time that Bataan was still, they were battling it out.
They were still
and
battling
in
it.
front of the house was a motor shop. They were, you know, repairing cars. And these are big, burly mechanics, you know. And they were friends. They would always come to the house because we had a little coffee shop. My mother would have little cookies and snacks like that, and she would sell. So they would come over and have coffee and listen to the radio. And inside that, and we would listen to the shortwave radio, and that's when we heard that 9, right?
It's January,
April 9.
April 9.
Yeah. The
With heads
heroic
bloody
and
but
gallant
unbowed.
defense of Bataan,
Bataan.
has come to a
An
tragic end.
Oh boy,
And
all of us,
suddenly, quiet, you know. We didn't
the whole house, you know, we just cried.
big burly mechanics, I tell you, they
Gosh.
were all crying. They were all crying.
Can't
And we were
believe.
just so. It was like all hope is gone. You
All
know?
hope, no more.
That was it.
Up until that point,
Yeah.
you always thought that they were
Thought
going
that
to
they
be
would. Oh, they're coming. They're coming. You know?
some kind of hope.
And then we
After
thought,
that, that's the end.
then
Then
from
we
April
would
6,
see-
from April 9 to May 6, they pounded every day. They
Corregidor.
raided Corregidor, they pounded Corregidor with artillery, and you could hear that all day long. Pam, 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 pam. From a distance, no? Pam, 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 you could hear it. Pam, 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 pam. And
And
then
I was-
finally, May 6 again, the announcement came from Wainwright. Was that Wainwright? I don't know.
Oh yeah, when they surrendered. In
So they
Corregidor.
surrendered, and that's when Churchill came in and with heads bloody but unbowed, the gallant Filipino fighter. Oh boy!
But up to that point, you know, we could still go to Santo Tomas. I would go, aside 13, I would walk. You know where Donada is, right? You know where Santa Scholastica is? Okay, we would walk, I would walk alone to Santa Scholastica. And that was the terminal of the tranvía, the streetcar. Take that all the way to España and then walk to Santo Tomas, and I would take my dad food. We could still go.
Yeah.
And then I would come back the same way. And thank God nothing happened to me, you know. I mean, well, at that time, we were safe walking the streets, you know.
Yeah.
What were your visits with your father like when you'd go? Because it was just you and him,
Yeah,
and you got to go inside the gate.
yeah, but we couldn't
Did you-
visit very long.
No.
So I would just tell him what we were doing, and he said, oh, things,
Did
you
he
know.
tell you what life was like? in
Yeah, he said, oh, we have our little gardens here, and we get enough to eat. And it was okay, you know. And then after that, it started to get... And then when we would go with my mom and I and Butch would go, there was this Japanese Nisei. He was a civilian. And he would manage to have us go in, and then later on we found out that he was working he was like an undercover.
Was he with the Kempetai?
No, he wasn't with the camp. He was some civilian
It's a bit an employee, maybe.
organization that they had.
And
But
he managed to get your father out of the camp
no,
for a
no,
while?
no, he wasn't.
It wasn't him.
It wasn't him. We moved like 2 doors away, and then your mom, Toching, and your grandmother and us, we were in a separate apartment, and then Potay and Lulu and Carmen were next door. So we were all there. And that's when we still had the coffee shop, and you know, we got to, and then your mom was working in a restaurant, I think she was.
The New India?
No, New India was theirs. That was your dad's already.
But they hadn't started that yet.
No, that was later on after she got married. But then we had the friends come over, and I don't know where she met them. And they were the ones who helped us get my dad out for like 3-4 months.
And they were Japanese?
They were Japanese. In fact, there is a picture somewhere. You know, I have so many albums that I don't know where to start looking for them. And his name was Shinohara. He was so nice, spoke good English. And there was another Kambe, his name was. He was very stoic. And we were all scared of him. But he was like in the top echelon of the Kempetai or whatever. And he helped us. He helped us get my dad out for a few months. And then I remember when my dad was at home, he would argue. He would argue with them. And my mom would say, don't argue anymore. You know? And then he would shut up, and then he would start arguing. And
obviously they were friends. You
Yeah.
can't argue with it.
No, there was.
And my dad, while he was out, he made cigarettes. He built a cigarette making machine.
The rolling.
Yeah. He would put the paper, and then the tobacco, he would sprinkle it with rum or something, you know, and dry that. And then he would, I remember it would roll, and it would come out, oh, wow, look at that, you know. Yeah. Because more for him, because he used to smoke. So, but then friends would come, and then they would buy from him, you know, and he would, oh, it's good, you know, nothing else, you know, you couldn't get any good cigarettes anymore. And then in the market, it was getting tighter and tighter, you know. We could still buy rice, but then later on it became, they would confiscate when they were starting to, when the American troops were already starting to come back. Things are getting so tight, they would confiscate everything. They would confiscate the cars, the food, everything. And
did you get any help from the Red Cross, the Filipino Red Cross?
no, there was no help. No, nothing. Red Cross couldn't do anything. There was nothing. And they had, we had a friend who owned their family owned a rice mill in Negros. And of course, they were forced to sell to the Japanese at their price. So he said, you know what we do? Because they load the rice on trucks, and then they weigh it minus the weight of the truck or something like that. We put bricks under the truck, so it's heavier. And then so when they weigh it,
it's heavier.
It's heavier.
They take the rice out.
Right down. And then later on, when the
oh, really? Yeah, and then that was when we moved already to Pasay near Harrison, near Dewey Boulevard. We were just a block away from Dewey Boulevard. And then there was another kid on the block, friend of ours. He used to ride his bike with the swastika. He was German. Hans, I forgot his name, Hans. With the swastika. And he would ride his bike. Hi, hi. And we would always, the other boys would tease him. You wait, Hans, when the Americans come here, you'll be the first one we'll point at. But we were kids, you know, we didn't, you know. And my mother would always say, be careful how you talk to Hans. You know, he's German. Oh, no, it's only Hans. We know him, you know, but you, Hans, you be careful. How would the Americans come? But then we would play together, you know.
Japanese time was
And then
almost like normal.
when your mom was working for, not New India, the other restaurant.
Mrs. George?
No, that was already after. Oh, that was before the war.
Before the war? Okay.
Yeah, Mrs. George.
She was with another restaurant?
Yeah, where your father was the owner.
Bluebird?
I forgot the name now.
Okay.
But no. Anyway, your dad owned that restaurant, and she worked there, and then I worked there, and I had to get a permit from the, a minor and all that stuff. But that's why I tell these kids now, my nieces, my grandkids, Jojo, at 13 I was already working. I said, full time.
What were you doing in the restaurant?
Waitress, waiting, yeah.
Both
I was with pigtails yet,
Both
no
of you?
makeup, yeah. And they thought I was cute, I was serving them,
Well, you're still cute.
And then after your dad and mom got married, then they opened the restaurant New India. But and then they were living on Dakota, I think, that street where they were living. So we would go there once a week. And then at that time we considered Carlota and Gopal rich. They had a do-car. What's a
My
do-car?
golly, when you have a
They had
do-car,
Yeah, their own.
That's a Cadillac.
That's like
That's a
a
Cadillac.
Cadillac.
Like a
there,
Cadillac.
your own horse, your own
you,
buggy.
you have
and
a do-car.
Yeah, you don't depend on public transportation. We would go there. They had rice, and we were already on ration at home. We had ground corn every day, and that was rationed yet, huh? And you hungry? No, I don't feel like eating. Can I have that? Like that. So once a week we would go to your mom's house because she would ask us. I guess she knew, how tight we were with the food and everything. We would eat like pigs because they have rice. Then let's go. They have rice, all that rice, and we would just eat like it was the end of the world.
I wonder how they got that food. Is it because they had the
They
restaurant?
had the restaurant, so I guess
And
they
then
had.
maybe special permits or something to do that?
I don't
No,
think so.
you had the black market. Black market.
Japanese time was like any.
But the restaurants were also up and about, flourishing.
Yeah, I mean, there
And
was.
So the first few years, it was.
It
Is
was
it fair
all-
to say it was fairly normal?
Fairly
Yes,
normal,
yes.
yeah, except for the occasional zona. They would call zona. They would zone up a place, gather all the men, and somebody with a sack on his face, with a slit in the eyes, will point out who the guerrillas were.
I think that was more in the provinces, no? That
Manila, there was also Manila.
Manila was more
But
political.
not too much, but as much in the provinces. But Manila was, it was like us. What happened was, when Bataan fell and Corregidor fell, then the soldiers were all in Capas, and later on they were released. The Japanese brought them to what they call, they had a name for it. They brought it to public schools, and with the civilians. And most of the Visayan soldiers, like I said, the ones who fought in Luzon, were soldiers from our province. And my father was congressman of our province, and the only one they could run to was my father to guarantee for their release, Somebody has to guarantee that I guarantee for this that he will not
So
become...
he was still in power then? He was still
No more. But they knew him, and sometimes through friends they would say, Mr. Oppus, please, can you guarantee? And not only did he guarantee, we had to feed them because they lived with us in the house. Oh, we were about 40 to 50 people in the house. But then some of those